What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Happy freaking Monday. My name is Austin Jardine, and this is the Vanguard Project podcast. Man, I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. I spent a ton of time outside shooting. I had some friends out of town that had me step in for them to help some other people go out and shoot for not necessarily their first time, but shoot some fun rifles, some long range stuff. Running around in the desert on an ATV. Had a good time. Then a big family event on Sunday, I think there was like 10 or 12 people out shooting, just having a good time, kind of running the gamut of different guns. And so I feel pretty fortunate this weekend, spent a little bit of money out shooting, but had a wonderful time. So I hope you all, did something that filled your cup a little bit. But I am really excited for today's episode with Mr. Ian Strimbeck of Rune Nation. And before we get into it, for those of you maybe tuning in for the first time, this podcast really focuses on telling people stories. My goal isn't really to kind of talk so much about myself or kind of have necessarily like a random conversation, I guess you could say. So much is really understanding who people are, where they come from, what it is that they do, right, and how they got to where they're at. And my hope is as you start to listen and kind of really dive into these people's stories, we understand a little bit of their motivation, insight, understanding their struggles, so that if you feel the desire to maybe follow in their footsteps in a way, maybe live vicariously through them, find a way to kind of pursue your passion if you maybe don't understand how, or want to find a way to get kicked forward, or maybe find a community to join in on. Hoping that these stories help you kind of understand that, there's ways to do that, and that you can start to tap into different communities. So in doing that, my real end goal is growth through story and strength through community, which I do my best to embody, kind of like I said, through telling or having folks tell their stories and kind of share in what it is they're working on, and have you find ways maybe to join in on their adventures as well. So with all of that being said, I've been really fortunate over the past almost year. Like, I'm at 1 year here at the beginning of May, and I've been really fortunate to have partnered with a couple companies, and that have helped really get me connected, push forward, all of these great things. And one of them is Black Rifle Coffee, and I've been extremely fortunate. I love Black Rifle Coffee. I've drank kind of a montage, I guess you could say, or whatever it is, or a collage of things. I've drank a ton of coffee, and I love pretty much all of it. I think the one that really drives it home for my wife and I is the Power Llama, and I know I've talked about it a couple times, but I love the Power Llama. It's something that I've turned into a bit of a coffee snob, because I will make some at home, and I will take it with me to work in a little thermos, and that's like the only coffee I'll drink unless it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm fresh out of everything, and I need the sludge from the machine at work. But be sure to use code Vanguard for 20% off, which is nuts to me, to get 20% off a product using a code. So use code Vanguard, get 20% off, whether that's Power Llama, maybe you want to try a subscription service. That'll save you 20% off of that as well, which again is awesome. So be sure to use code Vanguard, 20% off Black Rifle's website. There's a couple other things that I'm a big fan of. Like they're ready to drink espressos, and I also like grinds, which might sound weird. Like, they're the coffee packets. They're great for hiking and camping and hunting, where you might need that little bit of a caffeine hit, but don't have time or the drive or whatever to make coffee. I know they recently came out with the grinds coffee. I don't know if my code is valid for that, and I haven't tried it yet either. I've tried grinds in a variety of other flavors pre-Black Rifle, and I'm excited to get my hands on some and see how they taste. But regardless, use the code Vanguard, 20% off. I'm going to stop rambling, and we're going to roll a really fun episode with Mr. Ian, because he is an awesome dude and very insightful. I enjoy talking, so I'm going to stop rambling and let's hit it. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Vanguard Project. I'm super excited. With me today is Mr. Ian Strimbeck, and I'm excited because we were kind of shooting this shit a little bit beforehand, and I feel like this is going to be a lot of fun. You recently got a van, or it's a school bus, and as you're talking, yeah. I didn't interject, but I can relate, because I built a It's my redneck camper on the back of my pickup, and
Heck
I
yeah.
didn't, but it's basically the same thing, but a little bit smaller. So I'm super jealous because you're gonna be using this to travel a lot in, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah. Big shout out to my buddy Nate at Range Fox. Him and I went in halvesies on this school bus, essentially, bought it from a walking New York caricature from Long Island, New York. And we're going to basically be traveling in this thing, anything east of the Mississippi. So anything within a 16-hour window one way, we're going to try to drive this thing to, just to limit our exposure of having to deal with the loveliness that is of the airport. So we're going to Michigan this weekend, and then we'll have a weekend off, and then basically the 3 back-to-back weekends in April, we're going to North Carolina. Then let's see, North Carolina, um, someplace else, and then upper state New York. So we're going to be going pretty much all over. Oh yeah, sorry, I apologize. New York, Pennsylvania, and then upper state New York, and then we'll have the last weekend off in April. So it'll be a good time all around, especially with those awesome gas prices. But it's still better than any day or any amount of time spent inside of an airport. So we're definitely super excited for it.
That's sweet. Yeah, I'm jealous. I think a road trip sounds like a lot of fun. Doing it in a DIY school bus sounds even better.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. We got carpeted floors. We got some wood paneling. We got some TVs. We got 2 couches. It even came with a working 400-pound foldable handicap ramp that comes out that will make a makeshift barbecue stand. So
dude, there you
it'll be
go.
all
That's
good.
it.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
That's awesome, man. So you and
yeah.
I were chatting. We talked a little bit. I'm familiar with what it is that you do. Do you mind kind of just giving yourself a bit of an intro and maybe
Sure.
kind of leading into why you're going to be driving so much?
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Ian Strimbeck. I am the owner and founder of Rune Nation. I spent some time in the Marine Corps from 2006 to 2010. Within those 4 years, I held every position within a infantry fire team. So, saw gunner, grenadier, point man, team leader. I spent all of my time with 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines down in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. When it came time to swear back in again, I forego that, said nay, and wanted to kind of try to get my own life back on track. So when 2010 came around, I decided to get out and came back home. Unfortunately, the home at that time was within the draconian and communist state of Massachusetts. It's where I was born and raised. And used my GI Bill to go back to college, and I went to Salem State University out of Salem, Mass. And from 2010 to 2014, in 2014, I ended up getting my bachelor's in communication with a concentration in journalism and a minor in psychology. Within those 4 years, I first got my feet wet, we'll say, teaching within the private sector. So I worked for a locally based firearms training company out of the state of Massachusetts. I also worked for an executive protection firm out of the greater Boston area. We worked alongside the international dignitaries, such as the Dalai Lama when he was doing his tours back in 2011 and 2012. Also, when rock bands or rock stars would come to do their tour, we work alongside them as their or they would be our principal as a protectee, and any type of other VIPs that would visit the Boston area. And then also along with that, we'll say I worked in less than desirable bars in less than desirable areas of Boston. And that really opened my eyes to the normalcy of everyday criminal interaction and how fast and how violent things can become, especially in small and tight and compromised spaces. In 2014, after I graduated college, I really had no rhyme or reason to stay in Massachusetts, just because, as you know, Mass really isn't big on the whole personal autonomy, self-preservation thing. So
What?
decided to go out on a whim and move up to now where I now reside, live free or die up in the state of New Hampshire, as we just call the Shire. From 2014 to 2017, still had a full-time job that I absolutely despise, but again, got to put food on the table for the family. And again, now I was working for another locally based training company, again as their cadre, but now this time in New Hampshire. And then finally in 2017, we'll say, saved enough of my shekels and was able to give my 2 week notice. And I have been doing this ever since. I own this company, and we're basically a consulting and education entity that more or less helps individuals, whether individual be a regular citizen, law enforcement, military, but helps them really figure out how to endure the trivialities that life can sometimes offer. And obviously, within what I do, it's more within the context of self-preservation, self-defense. So anything relating to a carbine or a pistol, and anything and everything relating to some form of grappling, especially grappling with edge weapons. I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since 2012, and it's been a huge part of my life, probably even a bigger part of my life than actually pressing the trigger on a gun. And it's opened a lot of doors for me. It's helped form me into the individual that I am today. And that is kind of what I guess differentiates me from most other kind of companies that are out there, where it's just solely focused on the firearm itself. And I personally believe that the firearm is actually, or should be, your last option when it comes to the idea of self-preservation.
Sure.
You know, if you can have a better understanding of your environment, if you can be able to talk to people or de-escalate somebody, or if you can control their posture and your position around them with some form of grappling, that means that it doesn't need to go to a lethal response. Because people always want to talk about the pre, as in all the training that you're going to do and all the gear you're going to buy and all the cool pictures you're going to post on Instagram, but no one really wants to talk about the post shooting in regards to the change that's going to occur in your psychology as to ending another human life.
Yeah.
And more importantly, especially in today's day and age, with how it's going to deal with the legal factor of dealing with basically being painted as a criminal, your firearm going into an evidence locker, and then you going back and forth between court, you know, potentially for over a year, for in the end, you hopefully be proven innocent within the whole thing. But that's kind of the paradox of what I do. I teach people these skills in the hopes that they're never going to have to use them. But as we all know, hope is not a method. That's why we have to have a method in place in order, if things do fail, that we have some type of contingency plan that can bring us home, our loved ones home, or our partners home at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's my little spiel.
Dude, I love it. It's I was taking notes, like frantically, like taking notes so that I can make sure I'm like, okay, there's a lot. And I feel like I'm not gonna be able to ask all of the questions I want. So it's gonna be it's gonna be a lot of fun. So taking notes, going maybe back to the beginning, because part of what I like to do is kind of tell the story of how you kind of grew up more or less into where you're at, right? So when you started in the Marine Corps, what was it that led you down the path of the Marine Corps? I mean, did you grow up in military family?
Yeah. So I mean, I had my grandparents being in the military. My father was unable due to an open heart surgery he had when he was 12, but he did work at General Electric for almost 4 decades. And there was a plant, a General Electric plant in the city that I was born in Lynn, Massachusetts. And he basically worked on every type of fixed wing or rotary wing aircraft that you could imagine. So the A-10, F-15, F-16, F-18, the Apache, the Cobra, the Black Hawk, you know, anything that you've seen in a movie, my dad's probably put his hands on the turbine, and it's at some point in time, even during the Gulf War. He was on the Skunk Works project for the F-117 when they were doing the stealth bomber and all that. So he wasn't technically in the military, but dealt with them heavily. Like he shook hands with more admirals and more 4-star generals than I probably ever had in the military. I even have a picture in my office downstairs of him with John Glenn back in the 1980s when John Glenn visited that General Electric plant. So Because of that, I actually originally wanted to be a pilot just because of, that's what he did. He always brought me into for like the GE field day, bring the families in and see the whole thing. And that's what I wanted to do. And then I realized you had to go to college and I wasn't about school. So um, I ended up looking at it in the sense of I'm going to go in the military from what my 17-year-old mind perceived as the most difficult branch. I'm going to go in the Marine Corps. And from what I am now, I was basically a shell of who I am today. I was very meek as a child. I was smaller for my age. I was an only child. I never did traditional team-based sports. I mean, when I was growing up, my dad also did semi to amateur professional mountain bike cross country racing. So
Yeah.
doing solo type of events like hiking or camping or cycling, that was more of a big part of my life. And as we all know, kids that are young, aren't really the most enthusiastic about those certain things, especially if there's an outsider. It's like the weakest prey to try to jump on. So I perceived it as I needed to do this, more so for myself to see if I could do it. Just because, like I said, I was definitely not the strength that I have today. And I help, and I feel that the Marine Corps helped mold me, kind of remold me into the more confident person that I am today. It's especially having Marines above me that were in charge of me, that were more or less my older brothers that, I could count on to look for counsel, to look for advice, things that I didn't have necessarily as an only child. And it gave me uh, purpose and direction, more importantly than anything else.
Yeah. So when you started to, I guess, rely on your brothers and folks around you, being the only
Yeah.
child, probably not having experience or I guess having experienced that at all, how did you go about that? I mean, was that a difficult thing to go learn, I suppose you could say?
No, like it wasn't difficult in the sense of like I was like an independent thinker, and it got me in trouble. Well, actually, I guess it kind of did, but not from not from my immediate superiors. I look to them, like I said, more as a mentor and more as individuals that I could look to if I did have problems. If I did get hemmed up of being off base and getting speeding tickets and stuff like that they could potentially cover for me, or not have their higher ups start jumping down my throat, that sort of thing. But because of my open-mindedness to things and having friends in certain other, we'll say, units and specialities within the Marine Corps, it did kind of get me painted as a black sheep, more or less, because it's not like I questioned authority in an unsafe manner, but I questioned authority in the sense of why work harder when you can work smarter instead. And I love the Marine Corps. I love my time in it, but you can talk to any Marine and they all will say the same thing in regards to how the Marine Corps follows its traditions, sometimes to a fault.
Yeah.
They're very Marine Corps is very strong in the traditions, but not so much thinking outside the box. At least with the unit that I was with, I know some guys that did end up reenlisting and they're still in it and they're loving it. But for me, by the end of my 4 years, I was so mentally shot just from the drudgery of it all and just doing things, trying to put a square block in a circle hole, and you're just wondering why, or they're wondering why things aren't working. I just was put my hands up and said, I'm done. I'm gonna go and try and figure things out for myself and more or less try to get some happiness back, because by the end of those 4 years, I was just so unhappy not in regards to what I did, but in regards to how I was looked at as more of just a number,
Sure.
which again isn't anything new. Again, you can talk to anybody regardless of branch. If you're in a basic infantry setting, which is what I was, you are more of just a body than you are as an individual.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I really kind of pride myself on, and I try to, help guide my students with, is to embrace this concept of personal autonomy,
Hmm.
to take responsibility for your actions, for your life. Don't allow, a certain person with a certain authority, whether it be in your job or in our country, to tell you what to do, what to think, and how to do it. You are your own sovereign individual.
Right.
And I think, what we've seen the past 2 years is that it's very easy, a little too easy, a little scarily easy to condition a lot of people to believing the opposite, that they're not capable, that they're not sovereign, and that there are people smarter than them that should make those choices. And that, to me, is absolutely terrifying, as I'm sure you can, concur with that.
Yeah, yeah. I can. It's funny. I've studied, and not to go down this rabbit hole because this can be totally terrifying, but like I studied economics in college, and I
Yeah,
studied mostly theoretical economics or theory
yeah,
based, right? And so I studied anarchy and radical economics, which was one of my favorite classes. And I remember doing a research paper on oh god, I can't remember what it is now, but it was terrifying because by the end of my research, I realized how easy it was to convince people of very simple but terrifying
oh
thing.
yeah,
Now, very
oh for
1984.
sure.
So, but that's a rabbit hole maybe for another day. Because it's fun to think about but scary to apply,
Oh, for
so
sure.
when you started to, or when you decided to transition out of the Marine Corps, right, and maybe at the risk of sounding a little woo woo, right, was it truly, hey, I'm not happy, I need to find happiness, I need to find myself autonomy, and I need to get out and apply myself in different areas? I mean, is that the driving force for you out of the Marine Corps?
I guess, I mean, probably subconsciously, yes, but even at, let's say, I was about 23 when I left the military. So I was a 23-year-old freshman going into college. And, I can tell you, when I was 23, like, even then, I really had no idea what I was going to do with this potential degree. That's why I think it's absolutely crazy that, a lot of people are pushing their kids into, going to college so that they're going to be in debt for the rest of their life, when they really have no idea what they're going to, like, what 17, 18-year-old kid knows what they want to do for the rest of their life? I really didn't even know at 23. I still really don't know, even though I do this. I still really don't want to know when I grow up,
Right.
essentially. But um, I think I more wanted to do it just to be, as bad as it sounds, to be rid of the military, and to see if I can accomplish this thing, because a lot of people that will say weren't a fan of me because they believed me to be the black sheep, told me that, you'll be back, you'll see it, the grass isn't greener on the other side, you won't make it out there.
Yeah.
So I kind of did it more so out of spite. And I refuse to be a statistic, especially one of their statistics. Oh yeah, see, Strimbeck's back. No, I refuse to that. So I wanted to do everything in my power to see if I could accomplish that. And I went to college for writing, more or less, because writing has always been my thing, not necessarily journalism. Like, I never in a million years would ever want to work for a newspaper or
Sure.
any type of news source, for obvious reasons, as we've seen in the past 2 years. But I do like the idea of creative writing, writing in general. I probably read 10 pages of something every single day.
Yeah.
I'm big on philosophy, on spiritualism, not on really a religious level, but just spiritualism in general.
Stoicism, hence the shirt.
I what? Yes, so
Stoicism.
yeah, there you
Yep.
go. Yeah, exactly. I've written a few articles for Skill Set magazine, for Recoil, and I recently had a piece, an essay that I wrote for my friends over in Salt Lake, called, they have a publishing company called Nonprofit. And I had a piece published through them. So writing's really been a big thing for me. Like, if you ever look at my social media, even though I'm not a fan of social media, I still try to remain some type of relevancy on there. So I post maybe once a week, but there really is more effort placed in the writing. I still try to place good quality pictures as well, but I could really care less if somebody doesn't read it. I'm writing it more for me, and there may be one person out there that the essay that I write in the caption may affect, and for me, that's worth everything at
Yeah.
the end of the day. I've actually started to place more effort off of social media and into something on my website called Mind Fuel. It's essentially a $3 a month paywall, and I put updated content on there every single day. I leave the comments open so we can create discourse and a conversation, and I don't have to worry about being banned. A lot of people have let me know that they can't tag me on Instagram anymore because I'm, obviously a domestic terrorist for the things that I have said within the past 2 years. So because of that, Instagram flags me and people cannot tag me, and I'm sure I'm shadow banned as well. And people have told me like, oh, you just create a second account. It's like, no, that you're not understanding. Like, I'm not creating another account on a platform that I don't support and that doesn't support what I do. Like, it's pretty obvious now that whether it be Facebook or Instagram, whatever else these biased platforms are, they don't support the Second Amendment, obviously, and they definitely don't support the First Amendment. At the end of the day, though, they are still one of the biggest platforms out there. I'm on Vero as well. If you never heard of Vero, it's a similar layout as Instagram, but
I
there's
think you
no
have.
ads, there's no algorithms. I've chatted with one of the guys that helped develop it, and they're really good people. They're really big on the First Amendment and free speech and all that. Unfortunately, it still doesn't have the pull that Instagram or Facebook is going to
Sure.
have. And I mostly still have them now to answer questions people send me in DMs or to chat with people. But I'm definitely not necessarily worried about having the most likes or the most shares, just because I don't believe as to what either of those platforms unfortunately stand for.
Yeah, it sounds like you're
Um,
more of the I guess the psychology, thought provoking
yes,
mentality side of it is kind of what I'm hearing.
yes, yeah, because as far as I'm concerned, that is the most important. Whether it's relating to shooting, whether it's relating to fitness, whether it's relating to business, all of that, the psychology of the self, your ability to endure, your ability to ask the hard questions, that's what's the most important. The what I do with the firearms of the combatives is just one of the many potential solutions to the problems that you may encounter in life.
Sure.
And I have found that even though the vessel that I use, again, whether it be combatives or firearms, is what it is in regards to having to use violence in order to come home at the end of the day, it still translates over to other skills, right? Like, if
Mhm.
you can shoot and move, deal with malfunctions, idea shoot or a no shoot type scenario, then that conference call that you've been stressing about for the past 2 months that you have to do on Monday is going to be a cakewalk, because you're able to keep calm, cool, and collected in a very stress induced scenario or event that we have within the seminar work.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the seminar work, right? And
Yep.
I'm probably jumping ahead, but I'm really interested in picking your brain kind of on the whole psychology
Yeah.
aspect of it, right? Is
Yep.
when it comes down to kind of those stress induced environments, are you drawing on past experience? Part of your 10 pages of reading a day, is it spent in, like psychology today and trying to understand what the latest and greatest is in terms of how the mind functions? I mean, how are you developing those seminars?
Yeah. I mean, it's basically been a a collection of just information over the years. Like I said, I minored in psychology in college. That was kind of my first like moment
Yeah.
to my interest in it. Just because it's probably one of my favorites was biopsychology, to understand how the brain actually works, your sympathetic versus parasympathetic fight or flight response. I also, within the past 4 or 5 years, got really into intentional breath work. So understanding how to breathe properly, starting with Wim Hof and the cold water immersion, and then moving into Brian McKenzie, who started a company called Power Speed Endurance, which
I've heard
again
of that
relates,
guy. Yeah.
yeah, which again relates to the breathing, because the breathing component is super overlooked, again, especially when it comes to shooting, because people just think about the dual nods and the full kit
Hold
and
your
the
breath and
suppressor
pedal
and
it.
the
Yeah.
laser and all that stuff. But then when I have them do a drill that involves sprinting from the 0 to the 50 and then get 2 good quality hits on the target, there were rounds all over the place because they're not understanding how to breathe properly.
Sure.
They're not understanding how to get into the position, how to breathe in a certain manner to stable yourself out, and that will stable the platform out in order for you to facilitate those quality hits. So that really kind of opened my eyes as well with the cold water immersion and the intentional breath work for not only shooting but also lifting and jujitsu as well.
Yeah.
And then also yoga has been a big part of my life too. Like whenever I travel, I have a foldable yoga mat that kind of like folds into like basically a map square, folds pretty small, and I can bring that anywhere with me. And it's the first thing that I do in the morning, stretch for 2 to 3 minutes, and the same thing at night. And it's just become a huge part of my life, because the more flexible you are, the less stiff you are, the faster you're going to be able to move, and the more efficient you're going to be able to get into those positions, especially in some of my seminars where we're intentionally working around barricades and unconventional shooting positions, like on your shoulder or on your back, or even inverted shooting over, shooting from the really small ports, and you have to be in these small compromised spaces. And you'd be surprised the amount of students who actually have to tap out and be like, no, man, I have to step out for this drill, just because their body isn't allowing them to get into that position, because they're just so stiff. And I do understand that we all have injuries, and some people have certain types of jobs that are very physical and all that. But I'm telling you that if a lot more people put more effort into doing the boring repetition of stretching every single day, and maybe spending 20 minutes, 30 minutes twice a week to actually doing a full yoga practice, they would be not only less sore all the time, but they would be more mindful, just overall.
Yeah.
And people always say they don't have the time, but they have plenty of time to, sit down on TV and watch the sports game or go to the bar or anything else. And, it comes down at the end of the day, if it's truly a priority for you, you'll find the time. If not, you'll sure as shit find an excuse.
Right.
And that's kind of the way that I look at a lot of things. People say like, oh, it's important to me. I'm like, well, it really isn't, because if it was, then you wouldn't be making excuses for it.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of questions coming out of that. I think my first one is, I definitely agree. So I come from, like I was telling you before we started recording, right, kind of the competition side. And I've been in, we call it tactical yoga, right? Because you have to find yourself in weird spots to stabilize a gun, to get a good shot off, right?
Yeah.
What is the purpose in your mind for some maybe incredibly difficult positions that might be uncommon in a real world situation? Does that question make sense?
Kind of. Could you
Like,
maybe
I guess why would you push people so hard to stretch and find awkward positions to train them?
Well,
It's kind of a
it's
tough,
very
weird question.
simple.
Yeah.
And, I would, as cliche as the saying is, I would much rather have previously trained from that position and not need it, than have to get in that position and have never trained from that position before and be like, oh shit, and end up shooting the wheel well, or shooting my toe, or just doing something stupid because I've never previously trained from that position. Like I was telling you before we started, I was doing a private with a client today, and he had never shot a rifle from the VTAC barricade before. I'm sure you know what a VTAC barricade is, right? It has all different ports, designed by Kyle Lamb from VTAC.
Yep.
Just really, it's a really good piece of simple cutout that you can cut up from a piece of wood. It has different angles, ports, just really shitty place to shoot handguns or especially rifles from.
Yeah.
And he was using the bottom ports to basically use inverted prone, or people call it brokeback prone, or just getting those really weird tight positions. And he's like, wow, I've never shot from this position before, and it's super difficult, and I'm super stressed out, but I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And what it comes down to is that we as humans, especially men, crave adversity. Like it's literally woven into our DNA. And the most anxiety ridden and depressed people that I have met in my life so far are the people who run away from adversity, who don't do the hard things, who are scared of venturing beyond the horizon. They're tethered to shore out of fear, more or less. And they are the most insecure people because they don't know what hitting rock bottom feels like. They might have an idea, but they really don't know because they've never pushed themselves that far. So because they've never hit rock bottom and they've never hit the bottom of the figurative well, they think everything is hard. They think everything is scary.
Sure.
But the people that do push themselves, again, whether it be through martial arts, whether it be through fitness, whether it be through shooting, whether it be all of the above, they are they're the most calm people I know, and they're the friendliest people I know because they know how to control their emotions under the worst possible environmental stress that they can offer or that
Yeah.
they can be in.
Yeah.
That's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. Okay. So I imagine you've hit rock bottom and using kind of this scenario, right? I imagine you've hit rock
Yep.
bottom. I imagine you've been around folks, you've trained folks that are at rock bottom, hit rock bottom, whatever the case may be, right?
Yep.
What have you found, learned, seen that help people bounce back from hitting rock bottom, like to continue pushing forward? Because it's easy to stop. When you hit it, you're like, dude, I'm out. I'm tapping. This is it. I'm done. I'm stressed out.
Yeah. Not allowing them to immediately tap out on themselves. Now, what do I mean by that? You're talking specifically in the context of what I do with teaching
Mhm.
with firearms. You know, a lot of students get irritated if they're not getting the hits, say, on the target, if they're shooting steel per se, and they're missing and they're missing and they're missing. And, you know, you can see for a brief moment that they just want to either just put the rifle back on safe or just reholster the pistol and be like, I'm done. But I tell them, like, take a breath, adjust your sights, take the slack out, nice and slow. And they're like, oh, you know, I'm on the last magazine. I'm like, okay, good. Then keep working towards it, right? Like if you have ammo in the gun and you can still continue the drill, then continue the drill. Like it doesn't matter how fast you are at whatever the drill is, especially if you're in the beginning stages of learning when it comes to firearms use. You know, a lot of people, especially again, guys like to compare ourselves to other guys, especially when it's an all male class, which typically most of mine are. So we're subconsciously trying to compare ourselves to other people. We don't know their story. Like a lot of guys don't know that the person shooting next to them, that they're like, wow, he's really good. He's been shooting for 20 years and maybe has had a career in the law enforcement or military in a specialized team or a specialized unit. They're just seeing like, wow, that guy can really shoot. Why can't I shoot like that? And they don't immediately recognize that it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of failure involved, right? It's not an instantaneous process.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we've, as a society, kind of unintentionally have done to ourselves, is seeing that, oh, well, I can order something from Amazon and it'll get to my house in 24 hours. You know, I should be able to do the same thing when it comes to my finances or skill sets, whether it be skill sets for lifting or martial arts or shooting. So we try to compare ourselves to that. So as long as I'm able to keep the student going and I can get them to finish the drill, even if they're the last one, they still understand that they were able to see it to the end. And
Yeah.
that's what truly matters. You know, speed when it comes to shooting, as you know, will always organically develop over time of the consistent repetitions that you put in. It's not going to be an overnight thing. Like I tell my clients immediately when they show up to the seminar, like, I wish I could tell you that after these 1 or 2 days that you'll be a grandmaster USPSA shooter, but that's not the case. You know, you're going to have a better understanding about yourself and how to use the firearms, but it's up to you after I'm long and gone and you're back here at the range to reiterate those skills on your own. And that's where most shooters specifically fail, is that they aren't able to hold themselves accountable. And that's kind of going full circle here with the lack of accountability overall in our society. You know, we're too easy to point fingers and say, oh, well, I didn't have time this week to dry fire, or, you know, stuff came up, or this or that. And that's all well and good. You know, like, I get it. Life happens. You know, everybody has their job, a family, a life. I get that. But it still doesn't change the fact that you failed to put whatever the specific work in. Yeah. And because of that, don't be surprised next time you go to the range and you bomb your cold start, you bomb the drill, because again, you didn't put the time in. You can't get aggravated and say, oh, well, I think the sights are off, or, you know, I think the barrel's dirty. It's like, no, you just haven't put the time in. Therefore, that's why you're sucking right now.
Yeah. So in kind of the context of all of this, right? I'm thinking, what have you learned as far as either goal setting, consistency, right, or scheduling, right? I mean, like when you sit down, you say, "Hey, listen," and at the end of these 2 days of the seminar, you're not going to be a grandmaster. Do you help kind of them understand what it might take to do that? Is that part of the conversation? I mean, or are you just saying, "Hey, I'm giving you the fundamentals, and after this, it's a matter of your own personal will to go figure it out."
Yeah, so I kind of the way that I go teach in general, and again, this isn't rocket science. It's not like some secret squirrel sauce that a lot of guys won't reveal the way that they teach. I'm not like that. I'm very transparent. I'm a very open book. It's a crawl, walk, run method. Again, this is nothing new. I don't have them show up to the class be like, all right, we're going. This is the cold start. We're going to shoot, move, communicate. You're going to target ID. We're going to do low light, and hopefully don't die. All right, see you later. No, it's not like that. We still do some type of cold start, but it's at not a fundamental level, but it's at a level that they can understand where they're at, and also allows me as a teacher to see where they're at and what I'm dealing with from a student base for that day or those 2 days, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Um, Now, in regards to what they do after the seminar or the weekend, I always tell them to reach out to me if they had questions about the drills that I offered. But I also, along with that, do something with a lot of other instructors don't do, which is what's called remote coaching. Now,
Yeah.
again, remote coaching isn't a new concept, but it's a fairly new concept when it comes to shooting. I've in the past had been remote coached multiple times for fitness through multiple fitness coaches over the years. And I thought of it as, if it can be done for lifting, why can't the same concept be applied for shooting? So I took a pre-existing software that's used for lifting, and I just replaced bench press with presentation from the holster, or reloading, or target transitioning, or movement, and they can video themselves. They send it to me. I dissect it. I put it through another app that I can slow down the video and draw in and draw lines as to where their presentation is, or if the presentation's off. And then I can give that back to them for them to dissect on their own time. And, I can set up their programming in the sense of, like 2 days a week, 5 days a week, all dry fire, all live fire, a mixture of both. It's all subjective to them and their lifestyle. And I've had clients over the years that have been with me for over 3 years now. I have some that were law enforcement over in Europe. So I've had people from all walks of life that come through this stuff, and in the end, it keeps them accountable. More importantly, but it also shows them how to program their own dry fire time, because especially in today's age now with the whole ammo situation, especially where who knows where it's going to go next.
Right.
Dry fire is super imperative, especially when it comes to pistol work or even close to medium distance rifle work. Being able to get those solid manipulations, either whether it be from, high or low ready with the rifle, or reloading, or again, presentation in the holster, things like that, that can all be rep dry. And again, if you're doing it intentionally and with effort, not just like, oh, I got to do my daily dry fire, just bring the pistol up and you're just going through the motions. If you actually have intention with it, you'd be surprised the amount that carries over into your live fire. And another way to become accountable is again, going back to what we talked about before with the bus. My buddy Nate, Range Fox, he developed an app called Range Fox that is currently available for iOS and Android. This is a shameless marketing plug, and Nate, you listen to this later. I love you, and this was spontaneous, but it's basically both a live fire and a dry fire app. And on the home screen, it has a pie graph that shows you your split percentage between your dry and your live fire time. So in the app, it has dry fire drills that you can do. It has a built-in shot timer in the app that you can use for your dry
Oh,
fire.
that's cool.
And then for your live fire, it has a collection, basically a directory of different drills, all the classics like Mozambique, the El Presidente, the Bill drill, has my cold start in there. It has movement drills. It has malfunction drills, and you can add that to basically a worksheet for your day. So, oh, sorry, clipboard. So like how you go to the gym and you have specific programming for when you go to the gym,
Mhm.
it's the same idea. You basically can add these different drills to your clipboard,
That
quote
is
unquote,
cool.
for the day. And so when you go to the range, now you can just pull up your phone and be like, okay, cool, I want to work on this. And then you can either use the built-in shot timer, which I'm not really a fan of because I have a big case on my phone, so it doesn't pick it up, and the phone really isn't designed to be a shot timer, or has a manual entry option. So you can take your pack timer or whatever shot timer you use, and you can manually enter the time after.
Yeah.
Then it moves to the next screen after that, which shows you how much penalty if you got it in the A zone or the C zone or whatever it is. And then that gives you your total time overall. And then it gives you leaderboard standings to see how you compare to other shooters who use the app as well. So it invokes that competitive spirit, and it also gives you intention as to what you're going to do at the range. And you can also choose between different setups. So if you have like an inside the waistband concealed carry setup, or if you have like an OWB like war belt type setup or whatever else, you can change different profiles depending on what you want to work on.
Yeah.
And finally, you can also change whatever type of target you're using. So you can use a USPSA cardboard, or a zone steel, or whatever target metric that you want to specifically use. You can choose from a drop down menu. So Nate's been working on this probably since 2017, 2018, and it's just been growing since. And I haven't seen anything anything else like that on the market. And that's what we're basically going to be spreading the gospel in the bus on our travels, with me teaching him spreading the range fox gospel. So that's really
Dude,
the two best ways that I found to keep students intentional with their practice
I
after I leave.
love that. Yeah. That's I'm gonna download that actually. I wrote it down because that's something. So recently I've been trying to do more pistol and carbine drills, right?
Yeah.
It's been one of those things that it's like, I should probably start practicing everything else rather than just being lazy and whatever. And that's been something that's been hard to find is a good source for different drills that I can just take targets out and set up.
Oh
Because
yeah.
otherwise,
Yep.
like
there you
you're like
go.
at the range and you're like, oh
Oh
shit, I
yeah,
gotta
dude.
Google
Yeah.
it
All the
and
time.
figure it
All the
out.
time. Yeah. I can't tell how many times I've seen guys at my local ranges show up with 250, 300 rounds. They blow through it in an hour, and then they have no idea if they learned anything. Right.
Right.
Like, even for me, even with what I do, even though like I'm a instructor and I, shoot for a living, I still have to watch how much I shoot.
Yeah.
So even for me, like I try to go to the range if I'm not traveling once a week for no more than an hour, and I'm shooting only between 50 to 75 rounds. And
Yeah.
within those 50 to 75 rounds, I have intention with each and every single rep, not just like just drawn out and just blazing.
Right.
Like I'm working low percentage shots or distance work or a combination of both, or movement, whatever that I feel that I'm slacking on. And I can do it right then and there.
Yeah. I've been starting to do that lately where like a couple of weeks ago, I've never worked around, never really tried working around like either my wife's car or my truck. Like I've done it like kind of for fun, trying to be all cool and
Yeah.
shit. But then I went out a couple of weeks ago and I was like, hey, like I watched a couple videos before I went, gonna try a few things. I only shot, I think, like 30 rounds. But
Yeah.
it was like I learned, and granted, it's like, hey, you shoot a couple of rounds, take a minute, kind of figure out like, okay, make sure everything feels good. Don't shoot the tire, right? Don't shoot the wheel
Yeah,
weld,
yeah, yeah,
And by
yeah,
the
yeah.
time I left, I was like, I feel
Like
better.
especially when it's not especially not when it's not a car that you got out of the junkyard, especially when it's a car that you're like, I have to drive this
Yeah,
car back home.
I gotta get back home in this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we talked, I feel like a fair bit about, the firearms component and a little bit of the mentality of it. You had
Yeah,
mentioned that jujitsu was a big part of your life. Do you mind
yeah,
kind of talking about how that came about and what
yeah,
role
for
it
sure,
does play for you?
for sure. So, uh, over the years, I've become really good friends with somebody I consider a mentor, not only from a teaching standpoint, but just a mentor in regards to somebody more elder than me that I can again look up towards as a young man, but also from a teaching standpoint. His name is Craig Douglas. He owns and operates a training company called ShivWorks, and his kind of flagship course is what's called ECQC, or Extreme Close Quarters Concepts. And it's 2.5 days of basically fighting within 2 arms reach with simunitions, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So Craig spent some time doing undercover narcotics work down in New Orleans back in the late 90s.
Whoa.
And that kind of what stemmed this EC, with a bunch of other things obviously involved. But his ECQC is what he's kind of known for. He was more or less, as far as I'm concerned, one of the first guys in the gun industry to really introduce this combatives type mindset into shooting, combining shooting, but also getting the shit safely beat out of you within the same class. So the class starts on a Friday evening, and you come in, and it's basically just the soft skills. So it's no guns, no combatives, no knives. It's just basically how how criminals work. So the criminal paradigm, like what are the do's and don'ts that criminals most commonly do, and then how to verbalize with an unknown person that you may encounter on the street, how to de-escalate a situation, how to look for pre-assault cues. Again, all the stuff that, as far as I'm concerned, is the most important, the stuff that people overlook. That's just the first half day. Saturday and Sunday is a mixture of both live fire and simunition work.
Okay.
So you're understanding how to shoot the gun from various modes of compression or extension with the pistol.
Yeah.
You're understanding the basics of standing grappling in a weapons-based environment. And then there's a culmination drill on Sunday where essentially you do some car fighting. So, the scenario is you're the driver. For whatever reason, you pick somebody up, or the person gets into the passenger door, and now he pulls the sim gun on you. Now you have to avert the muzzle of the gun and basically fight, get to a dominant position in order to draw your gun. Now, that was one of the first open enrollment classes that I had gone to after I left the military in 2010. This is probably around 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
And he was teaching at a local range around here in New Hampshire. And I had stopped in, took the class as a student. And I was a Marine. I had done some blade work as well, some blade work from a good friend of mine named Tom Sotis. He developed this blade system called Amok, AMOK, and he's based out of Rhode Island. And he was my first real introduction to the idea of how to use a blade in an offensive and defensive manner. Yep. So I had that behind me, and I'm like, I'm a Marine, I think I should do pretty good. Well, when you have somebody take you down to the ground, and mind you, in these scenarios, you're wearing these big protective helmets that are supposed to intentionally make you feel claustrophobic. You can't breathe really. It's getting all foggy because, of course, the turf that they have at this range is all sand. So you get sand in your eyes and your butt crack, all this type of stuff. And you're on the ground. And when your adversary is on top of you and he feels your waistline and knows that you're carrying a trainer knife, I had basically a metal trainer that's, dull and just gets you used to, you can get reps accessing it. When he feels that and disarms you of your own knife and then plums it into your rib cage, that for me was the catalyst of like, I need to fix this. Like, I had to take a moment and actually like walk off to the side to compose myself, because I never wanted to feel that way ever again. So as soon as I was done with that weekend, I searched out local places around where I lived in Massachusetts to start my inevitable jiu-jitsu journey. And my original idea is like, oh, well, I'll do it for about 6 months and then I'll do some, striking stuff and go on from there. Yeah, that never happened. I'm here 11 years later. And it's like I said, there's a local place here about 20 minutes from my house in town that I was thankful that when I moved up here, there happened to be a really good school, and I probably train there about 2 to 3 days a week. And it's just not only fantastic from a cardio perspective, because no type of machine you get on in the gym will ever replicate rolling 6 minutes with a high ranking jiu-jitsu belt. Like there's nothing on earth that can replicate that. So from a cardio standpoint, but also from a mentality standpoint, in the regards to intentionally getting comfortable in uncomfortable positions, and embracing this idea of discomfort, right? Knowing that as long as I can breathe and I can keep my hands in tight, and I don't have somebody wrapping my neck up or extending my arms out or going for my foot, I'm pretty good. Yeah, the guy's on top of me. Yeah, he's pretty heavy, but I still can get air in through my lungs. That means I can find an escape.
Yeah.
And that's what it's kind of done for me, is as long, and again, this applies to not just jiu-jitsu, but really anything. If you're in a bad position, whether it be from a mentality standpoint, like you're in a dark place, whether it be from a financial bad place, like your finances aren't good, or whether it be from an actual self-defense scenario, like your back is up against the wall, you got nowhere to go. As long as you can breathe, you're in the fight still. It's as simple and as cliche as that. As long as you can breathe, get the fuck back up and keep moving forward. That it's as simple as that. And people want to sugarcoat it and make a whole motivational manifesto out of it. But the reality is that we as a society have so easily contracted out our safety, or more importantly, our mentality and vitality to other people, that when it comes time to answer the door with the bad people that are behind it, we're not going to know what to do, because we've unintentionally allowed ourselves to become, and again, as cliche and as moto as it sounds, too soft to have a answer to that potential solution that's out there, or an answer to that problem. Sorry, should I say it's out there?
Yeah. So has jujitsu been, are you doing the edged part of it as well as jujitsu? Are they one and the same, or are they two separate activities?
They're kind of two separate activities. So most jujitsu schools nowadays are more so in the sport mindset for like competition, which is great. I like, when I originally started jujitsu, I was very like, it's only for self-defense. If you're doing anything else, it's stupid.
Yeah.
And then obviously over the years, I've definitely adjusted the way I look at things. And I look at it from both ways. Like any martial art was originally designed, for self-defense, just like any firearm was designed for self-defense. No one designed a handgun to be like, wow, these will be really good to put holes in paper. No, they designed it as a more efficient tool to take someone's life. Just like how any martial art was originally designed to potentially end somebody's life.
Right.
So that's what jiu-jitsu was originally designed for. And over the years, it's grown like anything else does. And it's grown into facets of multiple divisions of competition divisions of jiu-jitsu, which is great. But I feel like over the years, because that people have kind of lost a sight as to what it was designed for. And now there's obviously a purist side of the house where they only believe in self-defense, which is great. But at the same time, that doesn't lend itself too well to personal creativity of your game, quote unquote, in jiu-jitsu. If all you're worried about all the time is getting hit in the face or a weapon coming out, then your jiu-jitsu game as to what it looks like is going to be pretty cut and dry and pretty boring.
Right.
If, however, you're looking at it more from a sport mindset and see how creative that you can make your moves and move your body and not necessarily worry about getting punched in the face too much, the amount of creativity that can come out of that, and the type of submissions that people have developed over the years on their own account is pretty amazing. So I look at it as as long as you're thinking in the role as to where you could potentially throw an elbow, or where you could access your knife or your gun, as long as you're kind of having that in the back of your mind, then you should be good. That's a kind of the way that I kind of look at it. So it is kind of necessarily two separate things. I'm lucky enough that my school, allows me to every now and again pop in during an afternoon class, and I'll bring my bag of knife trainers and we'll talk about, how to work up if you're smashed up against a wall, or if you're smashed up against a wall on the ground, to simulate being like in a parking garage against your wheel of your vehicle. Like, how do you regain a dominant position when you're in such an initiative deficit? And we'll do things like that.
That's cool. I like stuff like that. My wife and I did jujitsu for a while, and I haven't. I think she's gone back more frequently than I have, but it's been kind of, in terms of priority, a little bit lower on my list lately. And it's fun because I've seen a couple people, I think you included now too, a couple people incorporate firearms training with jujitsu and kind of the grappling. And to me, that looks Really intimidating, totally honest, but a lot of fun. Like it looks
Yeah,
like,
well, I mean, like that's the distance it's going to happen at, man. Like,
yeah,
not to say that it can't ever occur outside 2 arms reach at 15 feet. That would be the best case scenario, right? You draw your gun, you
a
got
little
perfect
bit of
two-hand
time.
grip, perfect extension, perfectly in your sights, great. But most of the time, most encounters are going to happen within that bad breath distance, right? You cut the corner coming out of a bar and you bump into somebody, or someone's in there waiting for you, or whatever the situation may be. It's going to be within that 2 arms reach distance, and knowing how to manage their hands, their posture, their body is going to allow you to have more options to, hopefully, best case scenario, just get out of there. But if you can't, get to an established dominant position and make a choice from there as to where you want to go with that.
Yeah.
Just because um I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this one, but probably the most insecure people that I know that I've met over the years are what I call gun purists. So people that look at the gun as the only solution to the problem, right? And as I talked about earlier, like, it is, as far as I'm concerned, my last uh my last priority as to what I should be looking for, right? If I have to go to my gun as a regular everyday citizen, I messed up somewhere. I didn't
Yeah.
either see the threat early enough, I wasn't conscious to my immediate environment, or I allowed my ego to get in the way, and now I've potentially escalated the situation. So now I have to go to a lethal option, unfortunately.
Right.
And by people going and doing other things to make themselves more confident in themselves, whether it be something as simple as going to the gym, or whether it be going to the gym and maybe doing some martial arts, they start to see, like, wow, you know what? I really don't need to be looking at the gun as my only option. And they start to have, again, as cliche it sounds, an aura of confidence around them, right? They have a more upright posture when they walk around. Their shoulders are back. They're looking up. They're looking people in the eye when they talk to them. And all those things can be accomplished by the confidence that you gain in these arduous type of environments, whether it be under a 300-pound, back squat, or whether it be having a 250-pound dude on top of you in side control. As long as you can see it to the end, as long as you can breathe and you can finish the rep or whatever it is, then there is confidence to be found in that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know it's getting kind of late for you, and this is one of my favorite questions, but and I know we've glazed over, I can only imagine, and I'd love maybe to sit down again. But of your life experience, what has been maybe the one thing that you've learned that you wish maybe you would have known going into, whether that's the Marine Corps or training or even college and the communication and psychology route? I mean, is there anything that you're like, damn, this would have helped me out?
I would say one of the one of the biggest thing is the whole lone wolf, like, I'm an alpha wolf, lone wolf, I don't need any help. It's complete BS. Like, again, it's all like hype. It's all like, yeah, man, I don't need anybody. The reality is, especially in the industry that I'm in the firearms industry, where everybody's looking to get 1 inch above the other, it's not necessarily what you know. Like, what you know is important, right? Because especially if you're doing what I do with teaching, like, you have to know something in order to carry that information over and have knowledge transfer to another individual. But if you don't know people that can get your foot in the door to talk to those people or to talk to those companies, then it's all null and void. And letting go of your potential ego and putting that to the side and admitting, like, yep, I'm the new guy, or I know nothing, can you lead me in this direction, and being vulnerable in that moment will help you tenfold at the end of the day. Like, I've seen so many people's growths stop because they're unwilling to allow themselves to become vulnerable and put themselves out there because of the opinion of other people. And again, the opinions of other people aren't going to put money in your bank account at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But people are so afraid of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing, or wearing the wrong thing to offend somebody or something or whatever it may be, that they're in this kind of weird this weird kind of limbo space,
Yeah.
where they can't go back, but they're also too afraid to go forward. So they're kind of in this mediocrity, this mediocre kind of middle ground where they end up existing for the rest of their life, and in order, people always ask like, oh, how do I become an instructor? It's like, well, never stop being a student.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many thousands of dollars that I spent on being a student before I even thought about doing this full time. Like I basically apprenticed, quote unquote, for about 7 years under different people as their cadre before I even thought about, yeah, I can do this by myself.
Right.
And people aren't willing to put that time in. People are like, oh, well, I want, I've only been doing this for a year, and I can only still do it part-time. It's like, yeah, dude, you got to put your time in, and it's gonna hurt. It's gonna suck. You're gonna question yourself. People are gonna question you. But as long as you're willing to continually put the effort in and continually take even just 1% forward every day,
Yeah.
that's what's going to build up over time.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you maybe don't get asked a lot or don't share often enough in addition to that you kind of want to use as a parting gift, parting knowledge transfer?
Uh,
Honestly, that's my favorite loaded question, because I get
okay.
some really good answers, like some off the wall answers. So
Well, I guess people assume that I'm angry all the time, but I just have really bad resting bitch face. So
that's not a
that's
bad thing. That I don't think that's
yeah.
a bad thing.
No, and I joke and say that's why I have so many tattoos, is because I don't want people to talk to me. Because, well, yeah, I guess well, not that I get asked a lot, but people that don't know about me is that I'm a huge introvert.
Yeah.
Even though I do this for a living and I talk in front of people all the time, when I'm not doing that, I literally just want to sit in my house all day and sit next to my wood stove and just read. Like
Yeah.
that is, if I could picture a perfect day, it would be making my perfect coffee, which I am a huge coffee nerd. Like I have the hand grinder, I buy whole bean, I have an electric Bluetooth kettle.
There you
Okay,
go.
that's
Yeah.
how that is some bougie shit right there. And a gram scale to weigh my Chemex coffee on.
Dude, there you
So
go.
that mixed with some winter wood stove with next to a book, like that is my perfect day. I am not a city person at
You're
all.
a
I'm not
simple
a
guy. Yeah.
club person. I'm just a simple guy with simple needs, man.
Dude, I dig that. Everybody's got their thing. You measure out grams for coffee. I measure out individual 0.01 grains for reloading.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's kind of sad, but Ian, man, once again, thank you for taking the time. I really enjoyed our conversation. I look forward to sitting down with you again in the future and picking your brain some more on all of your knowledge, the skills that you've learned, and really kind of diving deep again into some other conversation. But everybody listening, I hope you all took some good information away. I would strongly encourage you, go follow him on the Instagram at Rune Nation LLC. I'll link it in the episode description, as well as his website. Go take a look at the classes that he's offering, some of the discourse that he's creating, right? Whether you're interested in getting into some of the combatives or some of the pistol and carbine work, I would strongly encourage you to go take a look at it, hit him up, and engage in the community. And like I said, my goal is really to help spread the word and get people involved and find maybe a new family to go join in on. So I'm gonna stop rambling, kind of as usual, but I hope you all have a wonderful week. Be sure to like, subscribe, and we will catch you next week. Thanks, everybody.